All right, we're good. We're live, Robert. Say hello.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Robert Given. How are you doing?
We are with Robert Given, I would say, one of the largest commercial real estate brokers, not in Miami, not in Broward County, but in the country. I've been looking forward to this one. I met Robert at a ULI symposium not too long ago. Interestingly enough, from that convention, we have our interview.
Right.
I was able to connect with Mayor Francis Suarez. I interviewed Mayor Francis Suarez, and I connected with Nitin, and I interviewed Nitin as well.
Nitin Awani, yes.
Yeah, it was great interviews. Well, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you're watching today. Inquiring minds want to know. And as we mentioned earlier, we're sitting with Mr. Robert Given of Cushman Wakefield, not only one of the largest commercial brokerages in the country, but with one of the largest commercial brokers themselves in the country. Before we get started, as I always say, if you want to work with a broker who's connected to some of the biggest business people, athletes, motivational minds, commercial brokers in the country, call me, text me, DM me, email me. Let's rock and roll. Right, Robert, you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's do it, man. All right, Robert, this is really impressive. I did some research on this. You've closed over 300 investment properties, whether it be closing or the funding or whatever it is, over 115,000 multifamily units, close to 30 billion, that's with a B as in boy, billion in transactions.
I'm not sure it's quite 30. It's more like 25.
I said close. I said close.
Okay.
I said close. I didn't say over. I said close. Tell us about your path to where you are today.
Sure. Well, this July will be my 30th year in the business.
Okay.
That's a pretty long time. So I started with a company called TriRail Residential in 1989. And at the time, they were the largest multifamily developer nationally, national firm. And I would tell you, kind of getting your roots in a firm that is so well established and have such good practices is really important to a long, prosperous career. Okay. Because you learn a lot of good things. You study behind a lot of professionals that are well established. They have great relationships, and I think that was key for me, starting with TriRail. In the mid '90s, I moved down here and I worked with a gentleman named Joel Altman at the Altman Companies. And was there 7 years with Joel. He's still a very dear friend today and still one of my mentors in the business. And I ended up working as the president and COO of that company, for a few years. We had properties from Chicago down to Miami and through the Carolinas, and that was working under him was a great study, and that was important to me. And then in 2003, I got into the brokerage business with CBRE, which again is one of the national cornerstones of the real estate industry globally, not just nationally. And there I worked again under a gentleman named Jay Masterman, who at the time was the most prolific broker in the state of Florida, and was a great person to study under. Okay. And then he retired in about 05, 06, and then I took over the practice. And today we have, I stayed with I moved to Cushman from CBRE in 2015, so about 14 years with CBRE, and now at Cushman almost 3 years. Wow. We have the same CEO here that we had at CBRE, and a great practice with Cushman, well connected, globally connected. Now my team is up to about 30 professionals, half of which are producers and half of which are support folks. Wow. Yeah, and one of the things that I'm most proud about is that probably the key folks that work with me have been with me 10 to 13 years.
The common denominator I heard across that was, it sounds like you had a key mentor in your life throughout every move that you made.
Correct.
That's amazing.
That's true.
And so 30 years in business. You said, where were you before you came down?
So I was in Tennessee, in Memphis, and we back then, we ran properties from Memphis into Louisiana and Texas from that office. I was just in Nashville last year. I love Tennessee. Haven't been to Memphis though. Great barbecue if you can get there.
Yeah, if you can get there. Now, I'm in the residential world. We were talking about this a little bit off camera, and I have close to 560 realtors under me. So, when you deal with an average sales price of $1 million and under, when you break that $1 million mark, the stress levels can be raised, right? But you're not dealing, I'm sure you have some smaller deals, but you have some deals that are over 100 million. So we're not talking about a couple thousand or 30,000 in commissions. We're talking about several $1 million in commissions. How do you handle that? What systems do you have to kind of mitigate that stress and handle that pressure that you're dealing with such large numbers on the table?
That's a great question. First of all, I go back to the team that I surround myself with. Again, we probably have got, half a dozen key folks on the team that have been here 10 years or more. Mm-hmm. Many names that you would recognize in the business. Zach Sackley, Troy Ballard, Callum Weaver. There's many, many more. Robert Kaplan.
Sure.
And, everybody on the team, there's no hierarchy on our team. Everybody has a job to do. Everybody's job is important. And if we all do our jobs, we meet the goals of getting our properties, sold or, financed or raised equity for or what have you.
Okay.
So I would tell you, having a good team around you, whether you're selling real estate as a broker or you're buying real estate as an investor or you're running properties, it's all about having a good team and being prepared, either internally or externally with third party team members.
Man, I'll tell you something, Robert. That resonates tremendously with me because having the brokerage, and we have 6 offices, I would not, and everybody asks, well, how can you be the president of the company and have a show and travel or do whatever it is?
I was going to ask you that question. How do you do that?
My team.
Yeah.
My team. I mean, the reality is it doesn't take as much time as everybody thinks, number one. I do it when everybody else is sleeping. My wife will be sleeping, and I'm literally texting and emailing and trying to get appointments set up.
Right.
But it boils down to having the right people in place. I have an amazing sales leadership team with Albert, Liz, and Carolina. I have a marketing department that's amazing, led by Rowena. So when you have the right people in place, they do what they do best, which frees me up to do what I do best. I'm sure it's the same with you. And what I do best is, spreading the brand, putting the word out there, motivating the troops, my troops, other troops, and hopefully the brokers that watch and say, man, I want to work for somebody like that, and here we go.
I do spend a lot of time on airplanes. We a lot of our clients are in New York, Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, Dallas, so we spend quite a bit of time. I'm the member of the team that spends a lot of time cultivating those relationships one-on-one, and so that's really my job. Typically, is doing that, and then, like I said, everybody has a job. We all do it. Yeah. We all have success.
I look at it as, for me, I'm nobody's going to be a bigger advocate of related ISG than I am. And when you have 65,000, there's 65,000 realtors in Dade and Broward County.
Right.
It's impossible to touch everybody, and I can't meet everybody and shake their hand. So the only way I can at least convey how special our brokerage is or the personality of our leadership is by video. It's an integral part of our business right now. Now, commercial, by the way, what's the biggest deal you've ever closed?
The biggest deal I've ever closed, we just sold a portfolio for a gentleman named Alan Rose.
Okay.
It was an $800 million portfolio. We closed it we broke it up into small tranches and sold it in pieces over the last several months. But that may be the largest.
800 million.
800, just over 800 million. Right?
Jesus Christ, that's crazy.
Right.
That is just that's. See, what I love about that is it just shows me from a capacity standpoint. That's why I love with these interviews as well. How much more we could do. Like I think about 800 million in one. I know it's broken up under one transaction.
Right.
Man, that's inspiring.
Sure,
it really is. Now, commercial real estate, like residential real estate, I'm sure has changed dramatically over like the last 5-10 years. How has it changed? Where do you see it going, and how do you plan on attacking it over the next 5-10 years?
Well, I really feel as though real estate is the asset class that global capital wants to be in.
Okay.
It's a very tangible asset. It's a safe asset, and when you look at real estate, U.S. multifamily and U.S. industrial are two of the asset types that folks want to be in, and typically, industrial properties are probably the most efficiently traded, followed almost immediately by multifamily. It's just become a very efficient investment vehicle. And so a lot of folks know these investments, both domestically and globally. And I think what you're going to find is that more international capital has found its way to U.S. real estate, and specifically U.S. multifamily real estate, and industrial real estate. And that was prompted mostly by the Great Recession, when investment classes around the world became less available. They moved to the U.S. real estate markets.
Interesting.
And over this last cycle, from 2008, over the last 10 years or so, they have become more proficient in understanding the market, how to manage properties, how to finance properties, how to partner with folks with properties. So I think that we've had a great compression of cap rates, the yields for which people want to buy and own properties, over the last 10 or 15 years, mainly because interest rates and treasuries have been low over that period of time.
Okay.
And you ask yourself, well, it can't stay low forever. Well, maybe it can't, maybe it can. But one of the things that I think will counterbalance treasuries moving up and cap rates wanting to move up is more capital coming into the market. So as more capital comes into the market to buy the same number of assets, those return requirements will remain low, which means values will stay high.
Interesting.
Right. So that will be what's happening in the next 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
Is that you're going to continue to see an influx of capital, especially in South Florida.
Are you seeing an influx of, it's not necessarily an influx, but are you seeing domestic capital from like the little guys kind of pulling together and getting together and starting to get into that buyer pool with the bigger boys?
Sure.
Because social media is a real big part right now of everybody kind of doing crowdfunding and let's all get together. And,
no, I know. I've put a few dollars of investment in with Grant Cardone.
Okay.
Who's doing that.
Sure.
So, so essentially, that's been happening forever. Okay, it's been happening in the country clubs more often than on Facebook.
Wow. Okay.
And websites.
Sure.
So today we just have new media opportunities and sources to do that through, and folks are taking advantage of it. This is my first Facebook interview ever. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thank you for doing it. So
right.
The bottom line there is that yes, we are seeing that occur, but I don't think it's really anything new. But it's new in the way it's being done.
Got it.
And I think private capital has played a very important role over the last 10-year cycle that we've been going through.
Sure.
And they have been competing with the let's call it the big boys, the institutions and the billionaires and that sort of thing. And so I think some sponsors have become extremely proficient in raising that capital at a moment's notice.
Mm-hmm.
They have got a great track record of doing that, and as a result, they have got tremendous buying power. So
you said moment's notice. I think Grant Cardone raised $15 million at his conference over the weekend at Marlins Stadium. Now, not to digress, but you were talking about your customers are not the traditional end user, right? They're not me buying an end property, or triplex. You're dealing with institutional investors that are buying thousands or hundreds of units at a time. These guys, these institutional investors that are buying these huge deals, what's attracting them specifically to Miami and Fort Lauderdale? And we happen to be in this Fort Lauderdale office. Los Olas is right behind us, but what's bringing them? What brings them to South Florida versus Memphis or Texas or whatever?
Sure. Well, first of all, right now I think we're about the 8th largest MSA in the U.S.
And what do you mean by MSA?
So the metropolitan area.
Okay.
Right? Metropolitan statistical area. So if
metropolitan statistical area.
Right. So if you look at Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach is one mega market,
sure.
right? And you put it up against New York, who's number 1, LA number 2, Chicago number 3, so on and so forth, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, DC, and then it's us.
Okay.
And as a result, we've had tremendous growth historically, but we're forecasted for really super growth going forward. Why is that?
Define super growth.
Well, I think I'm not a statistician, so I don't have all the numbers in front of me.
I'm just thinking because Craig's watching, and I'm thinking Miami report.
Craig's great at the numbers, right? So I'll leave that to him. But essentially, we are a non-income state tax state,
okay,
right?
Sure.
So you come here, you pay your federal income taxes, but you don't have state income taxes of 8, 10, 12% on top of it. New York and LA both have those states. New York and California both have those taxes. There's only a handful of states that don't have state income taxes.
Okay.
So I think many of your viewers have probably been putting money into 401ks, or if they're a teacher, 403bs, or what have you, and they've been putting investment dollars for their retirement into savings accounts that are tax deferred over
sure.
the years, right? And when they retire, they then have to get taxed at whatever the rate is when they pull that money out. Well, if you move to Florida, or you move to Texas or Tennessee, and you move to one of these few states that don't have state income taxes, there's a benefit, because when that money comes out for your retirement, you don't have the extra tax associated with it, right? And so I think that is going to create more population growth. So you've heard the statistic about 1,000 people a day move to
sure.
Florida,
oh yeah,
right? Well, and about 600 or 700 of those, I think, are South Florida, right, of the 1,000. And I think that with the new tax laws that are coming in, the little higher taxes, with the baby boomers retiring, we've not yet seen the demand. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that, that markedly increases. I don't know what that really means, but I think it's going to markedly increase going forward, which is and so the more bodies that we have here, the more retail that we do, the more housing that we have, the more hospitals we have, which creates more medical jobs, more tourist jobs, it's so on and so forth. And so critical mass will build on itself, and that's just one reason. In addition to that, I think you're going to see a lot of folks that are still like you and I in our middle of our careers that are also moving to Florida for the same reason, in that we are a low tax state and we have tremendous growth opportunities, and we are a very diverse economy. I think that's why we were one of the finalists on the Amazon list, right?
Well, and they pulled out of Brooklyn supposedly. So I was talking to JP about it last week. You never know, they may end up here.
Well, that's right. They could end up at Miami World Center or something. So, or out in Doral.
Sure.
So they could end up here, but just because they do or don't, we are on the national stage. I mean, that just shows you that we're one of the finalists for Amazon. Then we can become one of the finalists for anybody.
Interesting.
Right?
It's a great way to look at it.
Right. So that was a really well publicized, event, for a two-year period. But I think that's occurring, every day. It's just not in the news.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great reasons to come here. And I think our diverse economy and the fact that we have a number of folks from other countries that come here or want to be here, gives us a great job pool, a rich job pool that people don't know about yet, that haven't tapped into it yet. I think we just need one thing, like an Amazon headquarters, to really give us some explosive job growth.
Sure,
down
pop
here.
the cork.
We just need to pop the cork. Because people ask the question, if I put my headquarters here, will I be able to get the workforce, the educated workforce to come here? And I think a lot of people want to move to South Florida. I mean, the sunshine, the water, the golf, the ability to go anywhere in the country with 3 regional airports. There's a lot of good reasons to be here. And we are one of the youngest cities, major cities in the United States, right? We're only about 110, 120 years old.
Okay. I got a follow-up question to that.
Boston, New York are 300-400 years old, right? And so as a result, we are still in our high growth modes.
Got it.
And those other cities like us are Atlanta, Dallas, and Houston, and you've seen tremendous growth there. We are all going to grow, but I think we're going to have even a bigger benefit because of our diversity in our demographics here.
So I've asked a lot of people this question. I asked Mayor Francis Suarez, I asked Nitin, Avra Jain, Dora Puig, Alicia Severa. So you mentioned Miami's age. So let's talk about
you are really scraping the bottom of the barrel to interview me, but okay.
No, man, you've been amazing. This is a lot of fun, actually. What age? And I've gone more off script in this interview, I think, than any interview I've had. What age would you give Miami if you were to compare and give it an age? Forget the 100. We've been around 125 years or whatever it is. Like we're human teen.
We're an adolescent. I mean, we're early teens.
Interesting. That's what I get between early teens to the 30s, early 30s.
No way. We're in our early teens. When the headlines that Amazon relocates a headquarters to South Florida, that's where we'll be graduating college.
Interesting.
Okay.
Or an Amazon equivalent.
Right. We have a few companies that are doing some really large spec office buildings here right now. Terry Stiles' company, Kenny Stiles, and their company is doing 375,000 square feet here in Las Olas. Hines is doing 500,000 square feet in Miami. Others are doing 100, 150, 200,000 square feet in the burbs. We need more of that because I think what I have seen in my career is that if you build it, they will come here. And we have not had really good, large-scale Class A office space available for companies to relocate.
Okay.
And I think that as we build that, you will see that continue to occur. And I think if you see a headquarters come in, I think what we're going to see is some big banks that are currently in New York or Manhattan move down here to get more into Latin America and Mexico, and just ability to have a headquarters here to diversify into those markets and see this. This is kind of I compare Miami to like this is going to be kind of weird. This is I've never said something like this in public, but I kind of see us like Hong Kong in the APAC, Asia Pacific rim there.
Sure.
In that we are where two continents meet, two really strong continents of great demographics meet, where commerce comes together. If you do business in Latin America, if you're a U.S. company that does business in Latin America, you want to have an office in Miami, and if you're a South American company that does business in the U.S., you want to have a Miami office.
Sure.
Period. End of story. And as those two economies, which are huge growth economies, continue to grow, so does Miami.
Okay.
And South Florida.
So let me. I'm going to jump to a question I have here, because this was, of all the questions, actually, this is probably the one I want everybody to listen to the most. I'm blown away so far with the content. But I'm a residential guy.
You are easily impressed, but okay.
No, man, this is some really good stuff. I'm a residential guy, right? You're all commercial. I'm all residential. I think 99.9% of what we do as a company is residential. So I never really pay attention to what's happening in the commercial market. And as I was trying to put my questions together today, I was kind of thinking, you know what? I probably should be paying attention to the commercial market, but I didn't know the answer why. So as a guy who's leading 500 and something agents, as a realtor who's checking out what's happening in the marketplace, why should a residential realtor be reading about what's happening in the commercial markets?
It's pretty easy. I think you're old enough to have seen the transformation of Mary Brickell Village.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So
even here in Fort Lauderdale over the last
or Las Olas. So, over a very short period of time, I started working on Brickell Avenue in 2002, 2003. By the time of the Great Recession, it had completely transformed. And we have to thank people like George Perez,
sure,
who took a ton of risk to create, this density, for us. This what do you call it? He created a structure of density that then grew upon itself.
Sure.
Right? Critical mass is what I'm trying to come up with. So we've created a critical mass in the Brickell area. When I started in 02, 03, at 5 o'clock, the place was deserted.
Sure.
You would roll up the sidewalks and be gone. Today, you drive through Mary Brickell Village, you've got a grocery store every 2 blocks. You've got fathers walking their kids to school, with backpacks in hand. You have a walkable downtown area that we did not have 15 years ago, right? The same thing is occurring in a lot of different places. Same thing is occurring in Las Olas. Same thing is occurring in downtown West Palm Beach, around the new Brightline train stations. Yeah. You've got to tip your hat to those guys too, for putting billions of dollars of investment in our South Florida area.
Brightline's amazing. We took it for the first time a couple weeks ago.
It's fantastic. It's going to grow upon itself. So as a residential realtor, I think you and your realtors need to focus on where those type of critical mass creations are occurring. They're not just downtown. One of the big things in the institutional investment world is they look for what's called suburban.
Okay, so the holes in the donut.
Well, the holes in the donut.
Okay.
That's great.
That's another question.
Let's look at what Armando Codina is doing in downtown Doral.
Okay.
Right. Have you been through there lately?
Yeah, I have. I was just there. I just hired a great agent from Doral, and I was driving through. I was like, man, there's a bowling alley, and there's Cooper's Hog, and there's all these new restaurants. I was like, hey, this is really cool.
There are real families and people walking up and down the sidewalks, shopping at that retail, going to a great school that they have there, the new Publix that is there, beautiful townhouses,
Whole Foods, Fresh Market, everything.
Beautiful office buildings. What Steve Patterson at Related's created with George Perez in City Place around the corner. So we are creating at that intersection of whatever it is, 87th and Doral Boulevard, a suburban environment that is an amenity to whoever lives there. So your agents are dealing with folks that want to buy houses, townhouses, condos, et cetera, right? But they want to have community amenities. They want to have great schools, great retail, great grocery stores. They want to have all those conveniences, and so they want to have more walkability to it, or drive one of these little scooters, which I'm still too scared to get on. I don't blame you. I haven't gone there yet. But so you should watch where that critical mass is taking place, and you should follow people like Armando Codina, George Perez, Terry Stiles. What they're doing is they're creating communities, and if you'll notice, they don't just invest in a deal and then leave that market and go somewhere else and do another deal, which they can very well easily do. Both of those gentlemen could build anything they want anywhere in the world, okay? But what's happening is they're creating communities, and then they are reinvesting in that same critical mass. Mr. Codina is involved in everything around downtown Doral, right? George Perez, downtown Miami, downtown Fort Lauderdale, he's built one building, he's going to do another one 300 feet away, because they're building communities, they're building fabric. And that's where I think people want to buy townhouses, condos, rent apartments, have houses, because that will support better retail, healthier retail, and that will, it's walkable. You're not driving your car 30 minutes to go somewhere. But it happens not just in the downtown cores, but in what we call the suburban cores. Coral Gables, downtown Dadeland, Sunrise, the Midtown District of Plantation, East Boca Raton, the Atlantic Strip in Delray, downtown, downtown West Palm Beach. These are awesome environments to be in. Awesome. And people want to live near that.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a very hard time moving out to Davie. We lived in Aventura. My wife finally convinced me to go out to Davie, and I love it out there. One of the reasons why I love it is Davie has actually evolved a lot, and there's a lot going on around it where I no longer have to go 30 minutes away to go have a great dinner. Everything's right there.
It's amazing. Have you seen Davie Boulevard lately?
Yeah, oh my God, with the university?
With the universities and the retail that's coming in, the very vibrant
all the student housing that's being put in there.
There's student housing, but it's also a great place. It's only like 7 minutes from downtown Fort Lauderdale, and several other employment nodes up and down 595, and so Davie has become one of those markets that is so central that one spouse can work in one area, another spouse can work in another area, and you can have what I would call a little bit more of affordable space to live in something that's new and big and whatever. You're going to see the same thing pop up and down the TriRail.
There you go.
Right? So, folks want to live downtown, that's fine. But folks also want to have a nice environment that they can hop on and off a train. Mm-hmm. And now with the downtown train station, there's almost, plus or minus 25 train stops up and down the TriRail.
Wow.
Stations. They go from West Palm all the way down to Miami. Now, for the first time ever, the TriRail will go right into downtown. Previous to now, you had to go out to Hialeah and hop on the Metro Rail, the Miami Metro Rail, to get into downtown. So you had to go out to Hialeah, you had to change trains, and then go in. Now, that TriRail, every other train, from my understanding, is going to go right into the downtown station.
Wow.
Where Brightline is.
And I will tell you, when we went up to West Palm Beach, it was Veronica Escobedo-Gorson, Mike Ambrosio, Craig Studnicki. We went to a little ISG retreat up there. And when we were coming back on a Tuesday afternoon, like around 5, I put in my GPS if I were to drive from the West Palm Beach Brightline station to Fort Lauderdale. It was like an hour and 25 minutes.
Yeah, if you try to go from Federal Highway to 595 on Broward, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and we got here.
An hour 25.
We got here in 30 minutes. It was amazing.
I know.
2 quick questions because we've gone over, but I'm going to watch this one a few times because I got to take notes from this interview. What's one thing every realtor, whether it's a residential or commercial broker, should be doing on a daily basis to improve their business?
Look, whether you're selling a $500,000 townhouse or you're selling a $200 million building, I think your integrity as a transaction broker, your relationships with people are what matters most because everything is still human nature, right? The buyer of a $200 million building versus a buyer of a $500,000 townhouse is still a human, that's dealing with another human trying to get a real estate deal done. And I think you have to really cultivate your reputation to be straightforward, honest, open, helpful, trustworthy, and people appreciate that, and they gravitate to wanting to work with you and wanting to do more business with you, whether you're selling or buying.
Sure.
Right. So it's these are all these deals are between just 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
And people behave similar. They all want to be heard, right? They want you to use 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they all want a very respectful response, and they all do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell people that there are 65. I've referenced it a couple times already. There are 65,000 real estate agents in Dade and Broward County. Mm-hmm. Customers have a choice with whom they want to. They have a choice with whom they want to work, right? So they have a choice. I think they're going to want to choose somebody they like versus somebody they don't like. And what you said, if you have the integrity, the honesty, the upfront, they can trust you. That's who they're gonna choose. Last question, and we'll let you go. Book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation.
First of all, there's just too many good TED Talks to really give you a TED Talk out of recommendation. Probably there's a book about A.G. Spanos, and he owns the Chargers.
Okay.
And he started off in the restaurant. Well, he started off as a baker, I think.
Interesting.
Making I think bologna sandwiches and feeding migrant farm workers that would come into California during the season. That led into building housing for them and providing temporary housing for them.
Interesting.
And then that led to him building, I think, 200,000 or 300,000 apartment units across the country. And he just passed away, I think, this last year.
Okay.
But there's a book, I think it's called Sharing the Wealth, and where he talks about several things in his life. What made the decisions, and what were the critical things that occurred for him to become, a baker making a couple bucks an hour to becoming a self-made billionaire and building 200,000 or 300,000 units. I think he had a handful of different jets, and I think he had a great personal relationship with Bob Hope. I think he played lots of golf and had lots of successes that are good. And then he also gave back to the communities, later in life. And very successful man, real estate guy. But you can read his book and you can see decisions that he made along the way.
Okay.
You have to take some risks every once in a while, but you also have to maintain your integrity. So life and success is about the path where preparedness and opportunity cross, in my mind, right? So you should always be prepared. You should always create a little investment capital to be ready to do something, and then wait for the right opportunity to come, and then execute on that opportunity. And that's how you become very successful.
Wow. That was
Alex, thanks.
Absolutely awesome.
Great.
There really was. Any parting words? I'm going to go around. Any parting words for the group? I mean, that was amazing what you just said.
I would just say, we enjoy a great relationship with you and Craig and everybody at the office, and wish you guys a lot of success.
Thanks, man.